this year's football game. Suddenly, I sneezed and everyone turned to me. Dude, there she is. Even the way she sneezed is so pretty. I think we found our muse. She's gonna be perfect for the team. The biggest brat in the universe, Candace, had a violent reaction. Excuse me, are you guys blind? This peasant is not even a cheerleader, and look at her messy hair and cheap clothes. But the point is, she's still the prettiest. Candace looked at me with murder in her eyes, and it was my signal to run. But she ran after me and pulled me by my shirt. You're just our stupid maid's daughter. Always remember that. I reached for her arm and twisted it away. At least I'm prettier than you. Always remember that. And I flipped my hair and ran again. I knew I was gonna pay for saying that, but it was worth it. Hi, my name is Stellar, and I just wanted to have a peaceful life with my mom. But it's impossible if you live with billionaire brats from hell. Before I continue, please like and subscribe. Mom had been working for a super rich lady, Mrs. Branson, since I was a kid. In return, she gave us a cottage next to the mansion and paid for my tuition at a private school. She might sound like a generous lady, but she actually did all of this because no maid could put up with her besides Mom. She was mean and rude, and I hated her to the core. She had twins my age, Candace and Julian, and they were as bad as their mom. Thankfully, Julian had left for boarding school 7 years ago, but I still had Candace to deal with. Candace had always been jealous of me because I was prettier and smarter than her. And because of what happened in the gym yesterday, she forced me to do all her homework. One night while I was studying, I heard loud voices outside. I wanted to check what it was and saw Mrs. Branson yelling at Mom in front of her guests. How dare you serve us with silver utensils? Where are the gold ones? Did you steal them? She made us feel poor for a second, Mom. It was traumatizing. As Mom was apologizing nonstop, Mrs. Branson just kept on humiliating her in front of everyone. I so wanted to punch her fake lips, but Mom gave me a look to behave. I didn't do anything then, but the next day I sneaked into the kitchen and sprinkled the hottest chili powder in the world onto their soup. A few minutes later, I was grinning from the balcony as both witches ran around the mansion with burning tongues. I felt so pleased with myself, but Mom was furious. Mrs. Branson fired the cook because of what you did. I have no idea what you're talking about, Mom. I know it was you. How many times do I have to tell you to stay out of trouble? But those two are just horrible. We have to put up with them at least until you graduate high school. There are just a few months left. Please. Ugh, fine. But a few days later, Mom fell down the stairs and broke her ankle. She couldn't walk for some months, so I had to take her place, which only made Candace happier because she could boss me around even more. She made me do the stupidest tasks, like painting hearts on her nails and braiding her boyfriend's long hair. And when Mrs. Branson informed me that Julian was coming back, I just knew that things were about to get worse. After cleaning up his room, I felt so exhausted that I sat down on his couch to rest for 5 minutes, and I dozed off. When I woke up, I saw a guy with the most beautiful green eyes staring right at me. Was I dreaming? He looked so majestic. Hello, Buttface. Did you miss me? Buttface? That's what Julian used to call me. Oh, you're here. Sorry, I got so tired that I fell asleep. Seems like you were having a very interesting dream. Was it about me? Yeah, I dreamed that I was punching your liver. Still feisty as ever. Why are you in a maid's uniform? Where's your mom? She had a small accident, so I'm replacing her, temporarily. Now, if you'll excuse me, I still have a lot to do. Later that night, as I was serving their dinner, I noticed Julian's eyes following me everywhere. He even purposefully brushed his hand against mine. What was up with this jerk? And why had he turned out so fine? One night, I saw Mrs. Branson throwing out one of her branded bags in the trash just because it had a small stain. After making sure that everyone was asleep, I sneaked out and took it. But when I told Mom, she got so scared. What if she finds out that you stole it? You know that woman. She'll make our lives hell. Technically, I didn't steal it because she'd already thrown it out. If the bag was alive, I'm sure it would prefer to be in the hands of a cute owner instead of rotting in the garbage, right? I will never win against you. Exactly. The next day at school, we were in the middle of an exam when suddenly the girls started squealing. We all turned to the door to see Julian peeking with a smile. What was he doing here? Suddenly, he waved at me and blew me a kiss. My tummy did a weird flip. As soon as he left, Candace elbowed me in the ribs. My brother's just fooling around, so stop dreaming. You're not his type. Oh, trust me, he's not my type either. It didn't matter even if he was. I had to stay away from him because being involved with Julian meant trouble. One day, while he was working out in the living room, he suddenly called for me. Do you think my muscles look hard enough? Or should I work out more? To be honest, they were a work of art, but there was no way I'd tell him that. I think you should get a life, sir. He just grinned at me and laid down on his back. He then asked me to hold down his feet and started doing crunches. I held my breath when I realized how close our lips were when he sat up. He was definitely doing this on purpose. Excuse me, but are you flirting with me? Am I that obvious? If you think you can add me to your list of girlfriends, you're mistaken. You're really amusing. Too bad you lost those chubby cheeks. I can't call you buttface anymore. Should I call you sweetface now? Wow, that is so cringy. What school did you go to? Wattpad High? He just chuckled and reached for my cheeks to pinch them. You're so cute, especially when you blush. It's a blush of hatred. Anyway, I still have a mountain of laundry to do, so bye. I left before things could get weirder. I did my best to avoid him at school, but he was always doing silly things to grab my attention. And one of my friends suddenly started pestering me. Hey girl, I saw that hottie from the other class flirting with you yesterday. Are you guys like a thing? Ew, yuck, no. I don't date players. Okay, that's amazing. Maybe I'll ask him out then. I suddenly found myself grabbing her by her hair. Don't even think about it. My friend was totally surprised by my behavior, and so was I. I realized that I was actually having a crush on Julian, but I would never admit it, ever. A week later, Mrs. Branson hosted a grand New Year's Eve party at the mansion, and I helped the kitchen staff serve the food. I couldn't help noticing Julian staring at me the whole evening. It made me feel excited for some reason. While I was washing the dishes, someone suddenly breathed down my neck. Wanna get out of here? Your mom's gonna kill me. So you're scared? Where's that fearless little girl who used to kick my butt? And I was sold. We sneaked out and slipped into a sports car. Where are we going? Wherever fate is taking us. I was so confused when he brought me to a grass field. Why are we here exactly? You'll have to wait for it. As we sat on the car's hood and waited for whatever it was, we started talking. Why do you like racing so much? It's too dangerous. Racing makes me feel like I'm flying, like I'm alive and free. How about you? Do you still want to become a nurse? Of course. Remember when you stole my stethoscope when we were kids? It was just so cute how you ran around and listened to random people's heartbeats and tummies. Oh look, there it is. Suddenly, the night sky was filled with the most spectacular fireworks. I remember you wanted to see those New Year's fireworks so badly once when we were kids, but you missed it because Candace and I locked you up in a bathroom. Yep, you both are horrible creatures. I'm sorry about that. I was a dumb kid. I felt butterflies as we watched the fireworks in silence. I closed my eyes and just enjoyed the colors behind my eyes. When I opened them again, I saw him staring at me. He was leaning in closer when suddenly my phone started to ring. It was Mrs. Branson. Your mom is calling. We need to go back. Can we make it in 10? Try me. He winked at me before stepping on the pedal, and the next thing I knew, I was screaming as he drove like a maniac. The party wasn't over yet when we got back home. As we sneaked in from the back, we suddenly saw Mrs. Branson walking towards us. Just then, Julian pushed me down to my knees. Why can't you find it? Are you blind? I immediately got what he meant, so I started crawling around pretending to find something. Stellar, I've been looking for you. What are you doing here? I dropped my ring, Mom, and I'm asking her to look for it. Mrs. Branson seemed to believe us. I was so relieved. But later that night, as I was clearing the mess, I almost fell back in fright to see her standing behind me. Do you really think that I have no idea what you're up to? I don't know what you're talking about, ma'am. Stop with your acting, Stellar. And don't forget your place in this house. You're a maid, just like your mom, and that's all you'll ever be. Stay away from my son. I'd already expected this to happen, and I started avoiding Julian as much as possible. I couldn't afford to get us thrown out while Mom was unwell, but it was hard, especially when I found out Julian had fallen really sick. After making sure that Mom was asleep, I sneaked into the mansion and into his room one night. He seemed to be having a really high fever, and he looked so vulnerable as he slept. I stayed by his side for hours, but just as I was about to leave, he suddenly pulled me down towards him and kissed me. I got lost for a few seconds, but then I quickly pulled away. That was a mistake. I shouldn't even be here. It's not a mistake. I really like you, Stellar, and I hope you feel the same. Stop liking me, Julian. We won't work out. I'm not the girl for you. I won't fit into your world, and your family will never approve of us. Please stop thinking about other people. Just tell me how you feel. I chose not to answer him and walked out, but I couldn't stop thinking about him. A few days later, Candace and her friends were having a pool party, and I went out to serve them drinks. I saw Julian was with them, and one of the girls was literally all over him. The sight made my blood boil. I slammed down the tray and turned to Julian. "Excuse me, sir, but can you please come to the kitchen for a moment? I need to show you something." He looked confused and followed me. "What is it?" I grabbed a tray and tapped it on his head. "Stars. Can you see them?" "I can only see a jealous girl. But you're the one who told me we won't work, Stellar." "So that's it. Now you suddenly don't have feelings for me? You're just a player, Julian. One day you're kissing me, the next day you're flirting with some—" Just then, he gently pushed me against the wall and kissed me. And this time, I kissed him back. I couldn't stay away from him anymore, and we began dating in secret. We started sneaking out at night and driving around, and we had the best nights of our lives. But then one day, he looked at me seriously and said, "I'm tired of seeing you secretly, Stellar. I just want to let the world know that I'm dating an amazing girl like you. But I'm just a maid, and I'm sure it will be a huge problem with your family. I know it's not going to be easy, but I'll find a way. I just need you to trust me." "I do trust you." A week later, Julian's dad came back from abroad, and Mrs. Branson held a huge party for him. During the event, I looked around for Julian, but he seemed way too busy with his guests and didn't look my way once. I didn't think too much of it until Mrs. Branson stepped on the grand staircase in the hall and asked for everyone's attention. "Since we're all gathered here tonight, I can't wait to share some amazing news. My son, Julian, and our business partner's daughter, Casey, are engaged. Cheers to the lovely couple." I stared at Julian in complete shock as he joined his mom with the girl who'd been flirting with him by the pool, and he looked so happy. How could he do this to me? Feeling dazed, I was leaving the room in tears when suddenly Candace stepped in front of me with a smirk. "Oh, I warned you. You're not his type. Not every Cinderella gets her Prince Charming." Just then, I turned red with rage. I was still holding a tray of appetizers, and I slammed it in Candace's face. Everyone gasped and stared at me, and I left as fast as I could. I ran back to our cottage and started packing our things. "We have to leave, Mom." "But why? What's happening, sweetie?" "I can't stay here. Not another minute. We'll be thrown out anyway, so we might as well go ourselves." I cried as I told her everything, and she started helping me pack. As the cab drove us away from that mansion, Mom took my hand. "We should have left years ago, but I was too weak. I just let us suffer without doing anything. What will happen to us now?" "No, Mom. You're so strong for putting up with everything for me. Don't worry. We're gonna get through this together." We had enough savings to rent a cheap apartment, and I also sold the branded bag I'd taken from the trash. It was actually worth a small fortune. With some money to go by, we both started looking for jobs. Mom fully recovered soon and started working as a hotel maid, while I worked as a waitress. I also applied for a scholarship to a nursing school, and luckily I got in. I studied and worked hard for 5 years and was finally an intern at a huge hospital. One day, I found a bouquet of roses in my hospital locker, and I hated myself for wishing it was from Julian. But it wasn't. It was a patient I'd taken care of some time ago, Enrique. He admitted he liked me and asked me out. Enrique was charming and sweet, but I told him I was too busy for love. But boy, was he persistent. He kept showing up and asking me out in the funniest ways. And after months, I finally decided to give him a chance. One evening, as I was stepping out of my apartment to meet Enrique, I bumped straight into someone and apologized. When I looked up, I saw that it was Julian. What? What are you doing here? Are you going out on a date? You look lovelier than ever. Are you freaking kidding me? You're not even ashamed to face me after what you did? And now you're flirting with me? Just wow. I wonder what your wife would have to say about that. I didn't marry her. I didn't want to spend my life being miserable. I also cut ties with my family. Do I look like I care? It's been 5 years, Julian. Please, just get lost. Before he could say another word, I walked away, shaking with rage. I wondered if he was telling the truth. But even so, he broke my heart in front of everyone, and I could never forgive him for that. Julian had somehow gotten a hold of my number, and he kept texting me to meet him once, but I kept ignoring him. One day at the hospital, we received a patient who'd been in a bad car accident, and when I looked at the patient chart, my heart leapt into my throat. It was Julian. I rushed to his room and took his hand as tears streamed down my cheeks. He suddenly opened his eyes and started talking. I tried to calm him down, but he wouldn't stop. You have to listen to me, Stellar. Mom threatened to put your mom away in jail for stealing if I didn't break up with you. I knew she really meant it. So I agreed to do something that would make you hate me and drive you far away. I was young and weak, and I thought I was doing the right thing. But now I've cut off my family and made something of myself. And there's no point to anything if I don't have you in my life. Gosh, you wanted my attention? You have it. Just shut up and be strong for me right now, okay? Only if you say you love me, because I do. I'll see how I feel after a few days. So you better get well soon, you moron. I bent down and kissed him on the lips, and his blood pressure shot up from excitement.